Tell you what, I'll go turn the fryers back on and throw some wings in for you.
Hey, thanks, Helen.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be talking about the AAA Buffalo Bisons, who play in Buffalo, New York, of course. Later on in this episode, we'll have Baseball by Design wildlife correspondent Ranger Amy Burnett to talk about the American bison. And of course, designer extraordinaire Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumpers. Right now, I am super happy to be joined by Pat Malacaro, who is the manager of baseball communications for the Buffalo Bisons. That's not bison, it's bisons. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Pat, how are you doing?
Yeah, good to chat with you, Paul. I've been able to see some of your stuff on social media, and when you reached out, I was really looking forward to talking about Bison baseball and really the history of this franchise, which is so entangled with the logo, the community, and all that encompasses Bison's baseball.
Well, there's so much history, right? I mean, that word is really key to all of this. Before we jump into the team, though, I just wanted to get a sense for what it is that you do with the team, and and the role that you play, and how you interact with this brand. You're the broadcaster for the team, and we said manager of baseball communications, but you get to call the games, and so you get to say Bisons over and over again. What does this brand mean to you?
Well, I'm somebody that grew up in Buffalo. I'm born and raised in Buffalo, except for the time when I went away to school at Syracuse University. So I grew up when the ballpark, now Salem Field, at the time in 1988 when it opened, it was called Pilot Field. I grew up going to games as a kid when the Bisons were drawing 1 million fans a year, when the aspirations were for Major League Baseball or bust in the early 90s. So I think that is part of my story intertwined with the team. Is it's so unique that I'm able to be a part of the organization. And having worked for the team for over 20 years now, I got my start as a bat boy in 1999, worked in high school. It was a great high school job for 4 years, and got to stay in touch with the people that I worked with and for in those 4 years, and decided sports was the path I wanted to go down. Journalism ended up being the road that led me back to the broadcast booth. So I interned for the team. I've worked for the team for on and off for over 20 years now. So to me, Bison baseball isn't just something that I've been able to just be a part of the last couple of years, but it's something I've really grown up on. And the logos, the history of the franchise, the players, all of it is something that I really take and feel that it is something that is really a part of how I tell my story.
I'm so glad to know that this team is so personal to you. You've grown up with some different brands for sure with this team. So let's talk about that. You said 1999 was when you started with the team?
Yeah, that was my first year. And at the time, it was the sliding Buster logo, where Buster's sliding into the base. And it was a white jersey with a green, black, and yellow accents to it, a green cap with a B on the front of it. And that was a change. And the Bisons, basically from when they returned to affiliated baseball, and we consider in Bison baseball, we have the entire history of the franchise that goes back to 1877. And you have the modern era, which is 1985 to the present, which is the return to AAA baseball. There was a period of time where the Bisons didn't have baseball in Buffalo due to certain factors, but a return to AAA in 1985 is our modern era. So pretty much from 1985 up until now, we've had a red, white, and blue theme to our color scheme, except for the period from 1998 when the Bisons returned to the International League till about 2009 when the Bisons became affiliated with the Mets. And there was a 4-year period where we were affiliated with the Mets and we had Mets colors. So really about a decade and a half worth of, or actually almost 2 decades worth of different colors, but pretty much the color scheme that everybody goes back to is what we wear right now. And what we had when the ballpark opened in 1988 was the kind of the blue with red and white accents. And when I was bat boy, we had some really fun teams. It was affiliated with the then Cleveland Indian organization, and every year the team was making the playoffs. So it was just a fun time to be around, and the guys it was a light atmosphere in the clubhouse, and really some great memories.
So I have to bring this up because it's important to me. The logo that you referenced in 1998, the year before you started, that went all the way up to when you changed over to the Mets affiliate. You said you called him the Sliding Buster because Buster is the name of your mascot. I have always thought of that logo as the Sliding Hunter Pence because that logo looks just like Hunter Pence in my mind.
See, that's funny. I would not have thought of that, but now every time I see it, I'm going to think of Hunter Pence.
And then you referenced the very Metsy logo that you have. There's some Mets themes in that brand. It's got a very sort of realistic illustration of a bison. It's not cartoony. It's got the skyline behind it, a la the New York Mets with a baseball with the orange seams. So very Metsy brand. But this 2013 brand harkens back to that original 1985, the original modern era logo with Buster swinging at an incoming baseball. It's been sort of touched up and modernized. Obviously, that's pretty easy for fans to take, right? Like, because you've got the newness and you also have nostalgia at the same time, which I think fans, appreciate both of those things.
You think about all the factors that go into it. When the Bisons in that 1985 modern era up until 1997, it was more of a midnight blue. It wasn't a lighter royal blue like we do have right now, and that is one of the modern twists to the logo and the theme. And so that was one little change. But you're right, it is harkening back to the days of when we had 1 million fans a season, when the Bisons were still playing really well and having really fun teams on the field. And that Buster logo is so iconic in Buffalo, and it's something that everybody really looks back to, whether it was the days of Pilot Field, whether it was because the teams were so fun. And remember, the late 80s, early 90s, the Bisons, before they were affiliated with Cleveland, were part of the Pirates organization. So those weren't pirate colors that the Bisons were wearing. Those were unique to them, to their own. And whether it was Tim Wakefield, some of the players that came through, it just kind of brings you back to that time frame and that era. And I really think it was a nice mixture of the old and the new, and allowing the Bison franchise to really, kind of reset things. And don't forget, with our friends up in Toronto, the Blue Jays are blue and white, but they do wear their red alternates for Canada Day. So, the Canadian flag, red and white, there's a lot of synergy in connections to, not only the Bisons going back to what is tradition for the team, but also kind of working in the affiliation and the parent club and some of their themes as well.
Absolutely. That logo was in the article that I wrote about this on sportslogos.net back in 2015. So it's been, the logo is still relatively fresh when I covered this for sportslogos.net. I indicated that it was created by a local ad firm or a local design firm called Ad Pro Sports. It wasn't, it wasn't one of the big firms that you went with. It was, you worked with sort of a local partner to refine this previous look. Understanding that your role with the team at the time did not necessarily involve, discussions about the branding and that level of decision-making capacity. Can you speak to what the thinking was at the time to not go with one of the big firms, to work with a local partner rather than, this, full-on campaign?
This isn't a knock against any of the big firms, but I think one of the things that makes our franchise unique is we do try and keep it as local as possible. And, understanding what the fan base is, what better way than people that live in the area, work in the area. Ad Pro Sports is a company that we've worked with, at that time for quite a few years, and they help us produce our uniforms, and they help, produce a lot of our, promotional items at the ballpark. So they're a group that we were very familiar with even back then, a decade later or so, since this look debuted. And, whether it be in-house graphic designers that we have on staff as well, helping to kind of refine the look, make sure that it was the brand that we wanted. And sure, there were tweaks. We talked about the modernization, whether it was, at the time in the late 80s, early 90s, it was a scripted Buffalo or Bisons across the front, and now it's the block lettering. So certain things we wanted to accomplish as an organization to make it modern but unique at the same time. So I think, again, not to take a shot at any of the big firms that do such a great job with logos and, understanding the history and relationship that teams and fan bases can have with one another. I think that's one thing that really makes, our organization as unique as we do try and keep it as local with as many people that, have an invested stake in it already to kind of bring the authenticity out of it.
Yeah, no, and I can certainly appreciate that. It's such an expansive field of minor league baseball, and growing more expansive with the independent teams and the collegiate summer teams. venturing into these high level brands, that there's room for all sorts of approaches, which is what makes doing this so much fun for me. Okay. I want to get into the name of the team itself, understanding that you were not around in 1877 when the when the brand debuted. What is it the oldest name in minor league baseball?
Oh, you put me on the spot here. I mean, it has to be one of the oldest.
Certainly one of the oldest.
The only thing is, there was a period of time, like I mentioned earlier, when we didn't have affiliated baseball.
Right.
So that's where kind of the fly in the ointment comes in, is from about 70 to 76 or 76 to 83, that there was no affiliated baseball in Buffalo. So like the longest consistent nickname, it's something that I don't think we can lay claim to, because there are certainly teams that have had longer, consistent, continual play in minor league baseball, but it's certainly one of those that it's not just minor leagues, that there have been the Bisons franchise has been part of Major League Baseball prior to the Blue Jays playing in Buffalo in 2020. So there's been a couple of different Major League affiliations that the Bisons have had over the years that really are part of the conversation too.
Well, I did a quick Google search here. And so, this is not a list of the oldest continuous names. Buffalo Bisons, 1877, Chattanooga Lookouts, 1885, Toledo Mudhens, 1896, Arkansas Travelers, 1901, Birmingham Barons, also 1901, and then it sort of goes on for a little while. So anyhow, the name has been around for a long, long time. It might seem obvious where it came from, but I'll just ask you the question: why is a team in Buffalo, New York called the Bisons?
Well, I mean, you look at all the mascots that the teams have had over the years. It's always been a Buffalo theme. Whether it's the Bills, it's just kind of it just feels right because of the city name itself. So what better way than to nickname the team than the Bisons, because it just has that kind of look and that feel to it. So I obviously wasn't around back in 1877, and I don't quite know why we pluralized Bisons instead of Bison back then. That's one of the common questions I always get, and I don't honestly know the answer to that, other than the fact that it's 1877 and Bisons probably sounded better than Bison, because in this day and age, we have teams like the Thunder or the Jazz around, but back then, very traditionalist. You wouldn't have maybe kept it just Bison. So I know it's always a common question I get, and it's even one people will say Bison, not even realizing over the course of a broadcast and some of the road teams. So it is something that comes up quite often.
Well, and it's not just the S on the end, but it's the Z in the middle, right? Like, because normally people would say Bison, and Bisons is pretty different.
Yeah, and that's a Western New York dialect thing, and
okay.
Whether it's Worcester or Pawtucket, that's the one thing is it because of Western New Yorkers, we kind of make it Bisons, like it's Z's instead of S's. So instead of Bison or Bisons, Bisons is just the kind of the dialect of Western New Yorkers.
When I wrote that Sports Logos article in 2015, I spoke with Brad Bisbing, and who at the time was the director of public relations. And I asked him the same question, and he said, that's been the name since 1877. Try to make us stop.
Right.
and so it seems like that's pretty consistent with what you're saying there. There's the correlation between Buffalo and Bison in terms of not the city, but the animal, right? Like the name Buffalo, the name Bison. There are people, especially people in my life, one of whom may appear later on in this podcast episode herself, who will get real pedantic with you about, whether a buffalo and a bison are the same animal. Buffalo has become sort of the colloquial word for the American bison. I'm all for that. I'm all for, the colloquial use of buffalo to mean bison interchangeably. Is that something you live with every day? Do people come at you with that? Or is this the first time you've heard it in 40 years?
This is honestly one of the first times, and we did celebrate back in 2016 when the American bison was named the national mammal of the United States. That was one of the first times I had really come across the not just the Buffalo moniker for a Bison. So it's something we celebrated at the ballpark. We had a poster giveaway, and that's the beauty of minor league baseball and sports, right? Things pop up throughout the course of the year. This happened early in the season in 2016 when that was announced, and we put that out there pretty quickly. And Brad Bisbing, who you mentioned, is such a big part of our organization, is now the assistant general manager, does a great job of making sure things like that go noticed and don't go unnoticed. So we celebrate that, and it's really something that other broadcasters, we all just kind of, I guess it's because it's sports and because things are unique and quirky. I don't really get many questions about that, but it is something that every once in a while will come up.
Well, I'm sure that Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, Ranger Amy Burnett, is going to bring up the fact that buffalo, scientifically speaking, buffalo are in Asia and Africa, and bison are in North America. We'll see what she has to say about that. But I'm betting that will come up later on in this conversation. What about, okay, you grew up in Buffalo. What about the name Buffalo? There's all sorts of different origin stories about where the term buffalo came from. Is there one that you grew up with as understanding is the main reason?
Yeah, the one that I've always understood is that it was the Native American term for I believe the Great River. So it's something. There is a great history of the Native American relationship between the different groups in Western New York, whether it's the Seneca Nation, which is a partner of ours, and they are just to the south of us here in Western New York. It's again dating back to the history and the tradition of who came before us here in Buffalo. So that's always kind of what I've grown up with Buffalo as. And over the years, whether it's the 1901 Pan Am Exposition, Buffalo being known as the City of Lights, there's been different nicknames and different historical moments over the years. The Erie Canal, which here in Buffalo we have been able to really restore and celebrate. With so much change over the years. We have an area called Canal Side, which has now some history of the canal being built and how that all has impacted our lives. And, we still see it today where there's these big grain elevators. General Mills is right down the street from the ballpark. And we always talk about how the city smells like Cheerios, because Cheerios and Lucky Charms are what are made here in Western New York. And you see the boats pull right up to the General Mills grain elevators and, dumping the grain in. They make the Cheerios here, and that it's still so, even though we're over a couple of centuries removed from the city being founded and the name of the city and all these different things, you're still reminded of the greatness that the city's had in the past.
That Cheerios connection sounds like it might be a great alternate brand someday. That is ripe with possibilities there. Speaking of alternate brands, you all have had some fun ones. You have one of my very favorite of the minor league baseball food-based brands, the Food Frenzy. Maybe one of the most obvious ones, but you had to do it. I don't think there was any other direction you could go than to be the Buffalo Wings. That was unveiled in 2018. I'm hoping that was just received super well, but I'm also hoping that there was debate over the actual wing itself. Like, does it look too crispy? Does it look too saucy? Like, I want to know that there was debate internally and externally about that wing in your logo.
Well, you can look to the two different designs right away. And I actually, the original design that we unveiled in 2018 predated me by a year as part of those conversations. But I do know that, that original design with the drumstick was well received. But then in 2019, in a look we debuted this year in 2023 with the flat was such a hit. And you take what worked well from 2018 and you kind of apply it to how you want to redesign it a little bit. Look at our friends in Rochester, where they've gone through a couple different iterations of the Rochester Plates logo, jerseys and everything. For us at the Bisons to incorporate ranch I just lost my Buffalo residency card to the blue cheese and the celery as part of it. To be part of that logo design is such a key part of it as well. So it's not just the wing itself. It's the blue cheese that people will tell you this place has the best blue cheese in Buffalo. It's not just, all right, we're going to get it from a can and pour it into a cup. Different restaurants will put their little spin on it, add their little different flavor to it. So that's such a part of folks eating wings in Buffalo, and also the celery being the garnish at the end as well. So those are the things that make it fun, and tweaking it, changing it over a couple of years span, and really refining it so that it's really the best version possible.
When you eat wings and a plate comes out and there's 6 drums and 6 flats, which one do you reach for first?
I'll go for the flats first.
You go for the flats first. I go for the drums first. Maybe that makes me an amateur. I don't know. I didn't grow up with buffalo wings, right? So, but my college roommate, junior and senior year of college, and one of the baseball palooza guys who does that road trip with me every year, is from Syracuse and has very strong opinions about wings. And so I sort of learned from him.
Well, and that's the funny thing is, in Buffalo, we just call them wings. Like I know where everywhere else, Buffalo wings, because that's, they were made popular at the Anchor Bar here. But, you just go out for wings, and there's different, it's not just, okay, I'm going to get a hot wing, I'm going to get a medium wing. There's different flavors, there's different textures to it. And everybody here in Buffalo has their own favorites. And that's what makes it fun as well. Just like, if you go to New York City for pizza, or I'm sure if you go to Philly for cheesesteak, sure, you go to Geno's and Pat's, or you go to, here in Buffalo, you go to the Anchor Bar. But there's so many different places in Buffalo that have, their unique spin on wings. And that's what makes it fun. And that's what makes the logo and design so much fun, is you can go many different ways and different possibilities with it.
Well, and you mentioned celery as well. The following year, you had superhero night, and your superhero was super celery. And so that obviously is a wink and a nod to the buffalo wing culture there as well. How was super celery received on superhero night?
It was so well received, and that was the year after that celery finally won its first race in the mascot race. And every team had their Teddy Roosevelt. In the Bisons, celery was the mascot that did not win a race up until the end of the 2017 season. And celery became a cult favorite. And if I'm not mistaken, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was with the Bisons in 2018, and I believe he was wearing that super celery jersey and hit a home run against, I think, Gwinnett was the team that the Bisons played that week. So just some funny coincidences and memories that I'll remember of the Bisons wearing those jerseys. And even today, celery, people will ask why celery isn't in the mascot race, or where celery is. And it's such a well received mascot that fans still want it to come out of retirement.
I'd like to think that Super Celery is the alter ego of the Wilmington Blue Rocks Mr. Celery. Like he comes out when he's when he's not celebrating a run in Wilmington, he's solving crimes in Buffalo. That's my theory right there. Pat, this has been so much fun to talk about this brand. There's so much to delve into and so much history, and I really enjoy how you all have maintained the classic look and feel of the brand, but then also had that minor league baseball fun with some of the alternates that you've done, and really tapping into that local community. So where can people find you? Where can people find the Bisons on social media?
Sure. For the Bisons, you can find us at Buffalo Bisons on Twitter, or Facebook.com/Buffalo Bisons, Instagram at Buffalo Bisons as well. For myself, you can find me on social media at PatWGR, PATWGR for the radio station that I work for as well. And you can find all my stuff there. And, hopefully folks find this entertaining, and will, be able to enjoy some Bisons baseball along the way.
Well, and I forgot to mention that I've been to one Bisons game. I had a work thing in Syracuse, and actually flew to Buffalo so that I could see a game and then drive to Syracuse. So I will try to get back to Buffalo and catch another game and come say hi in person.
Sounds great. Can't wait, Paul. Thanks for the time.
Welcome back, everybody. I am pleased to welcome returning guest, frequent guest, Baseball by Design's wildlife correspondent, who comes on the podcast to talk to us about animals whenever there are animal-based mascots and logos to discuss. We are talking about the Buffalo Bisons right now. Ranger Amy Burnett, hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm very pleased to be talking about a classic AAA minor league baseball brand with you. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Bisons, Buffalo.
Or are they just called Buffalo Bison, which is basically like saying wrong name for bison and bison?
You got right to it. You got right to that. Took the over-under was like 30 seconds on how long it would take you to get to your anti-colloquial use of buffalo interchangeably with bison or bisons.
Hey, you know that I'm just about as much of a nerd as you are. I'm just nerdy about animals instead of baseball.
The city of Buffalo is named for a Native American term for great river. The term buffalo is often used interchangeably for the American bison.
Right.
And you came in here with your pedantry.
I did.
And it took less. I mean, we have to go back to like the tape here and see how long it took, but it might have taken less than 15 seconds.
Did you actually bet on this?
There's no actual money on it, but it certainly was predicted earlier in the episode. Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So anyway, we've established that 99% of English speakers will use the terms buffalo and bison interchangeably. People who watch baseball in New York will use the term bison and bisons interchangeably, and that's so we can get pedantic about grammar things there too.
But I told you that I saw deers today.
You did say deers today.
I made you laugh. But otherwise, how do you know that I saw multiple? But yes, it is bison, not bisons.
Or bisons.
But anyway, they are the largest land mammal. Did you know that? Pretty cool.
Bison are the largest land mammal.
They are, yeah. Isn't that cool? They're actually our national mammal. So we used to have about 30 million bison in the U.S., which is a lot. They were almost hunted to extinction. Almost. There were fewer than 400 left in the U.S., and now there are about 500,000 bison in the country. So we
had 30 million bison
30 million
in the country. They were largely hunted to extinction. I know that the westward expansion and the building of railroads had a lot to do with that. They were in the way of the railroads.
There are a couple of different theories about why the buffalo were cut
Look
that out.
No. We got to leave that in. You just said buffalo talking about the animal.
Anyway, so there were a couple of different theories as to why bison were almost hunted to extinction. One thing that you probably do know is that before horses and gunpowder were introduced to the Native American tribes across the West, they used to stampede bison to their deaths off cliff, and one stampede or jump, as they would call it, would feed the whole tribe for about a year. So they used all parts of the bison, as you know, for food, clothing, shelter, everything was used. Even the horn was used. However, the U.S. Army, seeing that this was a big huge food source and wanting to rid the West of Native Americans, one thing that they did do is decide that they were going to rid the West of bison because that was Native Americans' food source. And so they had the U.S. troops and market hunters were actually recruited to kill off the bison, and it was pretty successful.
That is tragic and awful. Hard truth, absolutely. The current day, bison are actually sort of getting their revenge against us because more people are injured by bison every year in Yellowstone than any other threat in the park. Okay, but this is not bison fighting back. I have seen these videos at Yellowstone of people being idiots.
They're getting their revenge.
People think like, oh, I'm in a national park. These must be like domesticated in some way. And they like walk up to like scratch a bison on the head and they get tossed 30 feet in the air.
I need to have the shirt that says, don't pet the fluffy cows.
Don't pet the fluffy cows.
I've seen the t-shirts.
People are idiots, right? Like, I mean, going to Yellowstone and you see these gigantic, turns out they're the largest mammal. They're the largest land mammal. In North America or anywhere?
Yeah, in North America.
Okay. Yeah. What about a beached whale?
Well, that's not a land mammal.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I mean, I guess it's temporarily a land mammal. But yeah, I mean, I have some kind of funny stories to tell. I mean, they're not funny. They're funny now. They probably weren't funny there. But, you know, back in 2020, one person was knocked to the ground and injured because they had approached too closely. Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Dumbass.
And then in June, so the next month, a 72-year-old woman was got within 10 feet several times for a photo op, and she was gored.
Yeah.
Yep. So surprise, surprise. She was airlifted, but she was okay. So
okay.
And as recent as July 2023, a 47-year-old woman was drinking coffee, and so I'm having this picture. I don't know if she was sitting down drinking coffee or standing up and looking at the bison. Anyway, she was too close. The male bison decided that he was going to charge, and he did. And he flipped her in the air a couple of times. Oh. The person that she was with said that, she did a couple of backflips in the air and landed flat on her back.
Oh my gosh.
And So that was kind of a crazy scenario.
These all sound like nominees for the Darwin Awards.
Well, when you see if you knew like if you really think about how dangerous these animals are, like why aren't people running away from them like they do bears? More people are killed by bison than bears in Yellowstone Park. Think about that. But the funny thing, kind of interesting part of that story was that the guy who watched the 47-year-old woman get flipped in the air a couple of times and was telling the story to all the news reporters was intending on proposing to her on this trip to Yellowstone. She ended up getting flipped by the bison. He did propose to her in the hospital room as she recovered.
I thought maybe he was reconsidering after watching her do that.
Well, I was thinking, yeah, maybe
don't go near bison when you're at Yellowstone National Park, please.
Just stay away.
Yeah.
One last story about bison kind of getting their revenge on us is that a woman was gored back in 1984. And you're probably wondering why I'm bringing this one up, but it's just because it's in 3 years later, the woman decided to sue for getting gored by a bison. She sued for $1.6 million. And she said National Park Service had failed to warn her of the danger of my injection, fluffy cows. So what do you think? Do you think she won?
I think she did not win. I'm going to have faith in the system that she did not win because the Park Service does a very good job of warning people don't go near the fluffy cows.
She did not win.
Yeah.
There were signs that she ignored. The judge said you cannot force people to read the signs. And the judge also said that she was within 15 feet and that a 2,000-pound animal with horns is nature's warning. So I kind of love that.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's bring this to baseball here.
Yeah.
You're the Buffalo Bisons. You're named for this gigantic animal, the national mammal that is going to charge you if you get too close. There are rules in baseball now where you can't just take out an infielder if you're running the base paths. And maybe this is why the Bisons have not had the same success recently that they had, early on in the days of this current Bisons franchise. You've taken away their ability to just like run a player over in the base paths.
Okay.
So now I'm curious, like what are the things that would make a Bison a good baseball player?
Well, it's pretty easy actually.
Okay.
How fast can you run? How many miles an hour?
I ran today. I ran 8.5 miles, and I was running at a pace of about 9.5 minutes.
Okay. So what does that translate to miles per hour?
Probably like 6.5 miles an hour.
Okay. How fast do you think a bison can run? Miles an hour.
Faster than a 47-year-old lady who was 15 feet away drinking coffee.
Exactly. They can run 35 miles an hour.
35 miles an hour.
So 3 times faster than the average person. So
wow. Okay.
So basically, remember we were watching that movie the other night?
The Battered Bastards of Baseball?
We were watching The Battered Bastards of Baseball.
Stay tuned next week for Rob Nelson talking about the Portland Mavericks on the Baseball by Design podcast.
And that guy was super, super fast. Remember that one guy from the Mavericks was super
Reggie
fast?
Thomas.
Reggie Thomas. Thank you. I couldn't remember his name, but he was super fast. But even he was no match for an average bison who could run 35 miles an hour. So go figure. So that's the most obvious thing when it comes to bison, why they would be a great baseball player, but they are very agile. Believe it or not, like they look like they're like, you've heard of the term bull in a china shop. So you think like bison in a china shop?
Yeah.
They were really like, you'd think that they were really clumsy, but they're actually really agile.
Yeah.
They spin and they can jump fences.
Whoa.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah.
And they can swim. I mean, I don't know how swimming applies to baseball, but the fact that they're agile and they jump fences and they spin, I can't jump a fence. So basically they can jump higher than the average human too. So that I think that those 3 things would make them a pretty good baseball player.
That sounds pretty good to me. That sounds like someone I'd want on my team. I do. Speaking of the National Park Service, I do have a question about the bison because you've not been to Yellowstone.
I have not. It's my bucket list.
Yellowstone is pretty amazing. It turns out it's not just a TV show with a lot of cursing. It is an incredibly beautiful place where you see these sweeping expanses and these herds of bison that just go on forever and ever and ever. And it's pretty amazing to see. My question for the Park Service, though, is like at the end of the day, they shut out all the lights in the park and they've got to put the animals away. Where do they put all those animals?
people listening might not know that I used to be a National Park Service ranger. And so I have a big love for the national parks. And I have heard these silly things like when I worked at Point Reyes National Seashore, someone came up and asked what time we feed the whales. So people don't make this up. It really does.
Where's the elevator to the bottom of the Grand Canyon?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So speaking of national parks and
Okay.
Yellowstone, Yellowstone is the only place in the U.S. where bison have been continuously living since prehistoric times.
Ooh, that's cool.
So that's kind of a cool thing to know.
That's a very cool thing. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, however, the herds are doing so well that when they move off, I'm laughing.
You made a
myself.
little cow sound there.
Yeah.
Now you're pleased with yourself.
Pretty
Do
happy.
bison also moo?
They kind of snort and make
Oh, I see.
weird, kind
Okay.
of like grunting noises and like really big, like groans and big, like kind of growls and grunts and all the the things you would expect would come out of bisons.
We have just north of here on the literally on the Colorado-Wyoming border, we have the Terry Bison Ranch, where they've got like this little train where you can get on the train and you take it out into the pasture where they have all the bison. And the bison know when they see this train to come up to the train because they give you buckets of food to feed the bison. And so that you give them these like pellets and they like take their gigantic head and sort of hold it out to you and you feed them these gigantic pellets and they reach out with these gigantic blue tongues and take the pellet from you.
Paul, we're just talking about don't get too close to the fluffy cows.
This is a controlled environment.
These are
where
not wild animals.
They're not wild animals. They're on a ranch and you're on a train. So they're not
kinda
gonna,
safe.
you're not out
Okay.
there with them.
I
But
think
you
that
you
would be
can
fun.
feed the bison.
Okay.
And then it's also the smallest interstate railroad in the country because it like does this little 2-mile loop on the Colorado-Wyoming border.
I want to go. Will you take me?
Okay, we can go there.
Yay! And then can we drink beer after?
Oh, you know what you can do after is you can eat a bison burger in their restaurant.
That sounds horrible. That sounds awful. Oh my gosh, that's so wrong.
It's delicious.
Well, speaking of eating, one thing that they do have in common with a baseball player is an enormous appetite. But they are vegetarian, so that's something they don't have in common. But they eat between 9 and 11 hours out of their day.
It's good living. I like that.
Yeah. And they're a little bit like a pitcher. They're always giving signs. So you have to kind of watch.
Tell me about this.
If you want to know if a bison is ready to charge at you, just watch their tail. The tail is down and kind of twitching like a cat's tail. You're good.
Okay.
If the tail is up, watch out.
This is something you excel at, is watching the tails of baseball players.
Wow, Paul. Did you really just say that? Oh boy. Anyway, did you know that I'm related to Buffalo Bill Cody?
No, that guy's a douchebag.
He's totally awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't tell many people this, but I'm a direct descendant. He's like a great, great, great uncle. But we can a family name in my family is Cody. And so yeah, we are directly related to that Buffalo Bill Cody jerk.
Wow.
Killed so many who killed so many bison. Oh my gosh, it's so hard to get out of the habit of saying. So anyway,
I'm shocked that you're in the habit at all. I had no idea. This is also something I'm learning about you. Is
it's hard.
I thought you'd be,
No, I don't talk about bison very often, and so
Okay.
I hear people say it. It's just one of those things. You just slip into it, Like,
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm sadly related to Buffalo Bill Cody, and he was responsible for the slaughter of thousands and thousands of buffalo, and I did it again, thousands and thousands of bison, and he bragged about it, and he had the Wild West show, which kind of went downhill because he was a drunk. So toward the end of it, he tried to save himself by apologizing, and he was like, no, Native Americans are not bad after all. We shouldn't kill them. We shouldn't be killing bison. And he tried to make up for it. But in my mind, I think that by being a wildlife ranger, I've tried to make up for it.
There you go. You're paying the dues of Buffalo Bill Cody. Ranger Remy Burnett, thank you so much for coming on. This episode has been even wilder than usual.
The Wild Wild West.
Learned a lot of things about you and bison. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for having me, and keep your tail down.
All right, everyone, welcome back. It is time once again for your favorite segment on Baseball by Design. It is Studio Simon Stumpers, where Dan Simon of Studio Simon brings a trivia question related to the subject at hand. This week, we're talking about the Buffalo Bisons. As we've discussed, Dan, it's the Buffalo Bisons, not the Buffalo Bison. So welcome back. How you doing? You are fantastic.
Okay, so we'll both agree on that, because yes, I'm always fantastic, Paul. How can I not be when I'm together on a call with you to do a stumper? Your podcast is always so fun, and I get to be part of that fun by trying to come up with a stumper that's both educational and entertaining. So here we go. In 1978, Buffalo Mayor James D. Griffin and an investment group purchased the AA Eastern League's Jersey City A's for $55,000. Imagine a minor league team costing $55,000, and moved the team to Buffalo, where they began play as the Buffalo Bisons at War Memorial Stadium in 1979. Now, the team existed before then. This was that particular iteration of the Buffalo Bisons. And they would play there until 1987, after which they moved into newly built Pilot Field, where the Bisons play to this day, though the stadium's now known as Salem Field. So our studio Simon Stumper today goes back to their previous field, War Memorial Stadium, and asks, what noted baseball movie was filmed at War Memorial Stadium? Was it A, 8 Men Out, B, A League of Their Own, or C, The Natural? Now, before we're going to come back to those choices again, so I can remind you of it, let me just add one thing to this. Per my notes, War Memorial Stadium opened in 1937. Okay, that gives you an idea of what the stadium might have looked like when built. Mm-hmm. So your three choices for the noted baseball feature film that was filmed at War Memorial Stadium: A, 8 Men Out, B, A League of Their Own, and C, The Natural.
That last little hint that you dropped sort of changed my mind. I was immediately going to go 8 Men Out, because I had it in my head that The Natural and A League of Their Own were filmed at different places.
I'm not trying to help you here. Then again, I'm not trying to hurt you, but let me give you one little other piece of information, which we will cover after you give your answer. Okay. Each of these films were filmed at a different stadium. So, yes. Okay, so I don't know if that helps or not, but I will give you that other bit of information. Okay.
I could be completely off base here. I thought A League of Their Own was filmed in Evanston. So the stadium was built in 1937. 8 Men Out was set in 1919. I wonder how much that matters. I don't exactly know the answer to this question. So you've always instructed me to go with my gut. I don't think it's A League of Their Own. I don't think it's The Natural, because The Natural, it had something to do with the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. That's one of the reasons. There was a connection to The Natural with the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. It's one of the reasons they're called the Naturals. So I'm going to go with my initial instinct, which was 8 Men Out, even though that's set in 1919 and that stadium wasn't built until 1937.
Are you going with 8 Men Out?
I'm going with 8 Men Out.
Okay. Paul, are you familiar with this new thing? I guess it's a relatively new thing, the Immaculate Grid.
Yes.
Okay. For those of you listeners who are not familiar with it, for me to describe what it is right now will take a little bit too long. So Google it, and if you're a baseball fan and you haven't heard of it, I think you're going to like this thing. But I have shared with you on several occasions, go with your first thought.
Yeah.
And I try to live by that myself, because I've learned the hard way. I was just doing an Immaculate Grid earlier this week, and I was on a roll of having Immaculate Grids where I've gotten all 9 correct. And I was down to the last one, and I was not certain of it. And the first thing that came to my mind, I was going to put And then I gave it a little more time and I thought of something, and another thing popped into my mind. And there was something about that second one that was pushing, the pendulum was swinging in that direction towards the second one. But I was thinking about what I tell Paul Caputo, and what I've told you so many times on this segment of the podcast is go with your first inclination. I thought that, I went with my second inclination, and the second inclination turned out to be correct. And my first inclination, it could have been right as well. There are sometimes more than one possible, not only sometimes, most of the time, more than one possible correct answer for each of these 9 grid squares. But my first one would have been wrong. So throw that out from now on, because had you not gone with your first inclination, you were correct about A League of Their Own. Okay, that was filmed. Now you said Evanston. It was specifically in Evansville, but you were close enough for government work, as they say. So the correct answer is The Natural.
Okay.
Which was filmed in 1983, and War Memorial Stadium, for whatever it's worth, was demolished in 1989. Now, 8 Men Out baseball scenes were filmed at Busch Stadium in Indianapolis, which was built in 1931 and was the home of the AAA Indianapolis Indians until 1996, when the club moved into their new downtown ballpark that they still occupy, Victory Field. Now, the cool thing about Busch Stadium, I love this. As opposed to a lot of older stadiums, which for usually good reasons are demolished, Busch Stadium was repurposed. Parts of it were demolished, but they retained much of the exterior facade, and the original lights are still standing. And it reopened in 2013 as loft apartments. And I remember when seeing that at the time when it happened 10 years ago, and thinking, if I was, I was married, still am, and I was thinking, boy, if I was single and I was living in the Indianapolis area, I would move there in a heartbeat. How cool would that be to live in what was once, and still from the exterior appears as a classic old baseball stadium? So that's the story of 8 Men Out. As far as A League of Their Own goes, the baseball game scenes were filmed at 2 different stadiums. The home games for A League of Their Own were filmed at League Stadium in Huntingburg, Indiana, which was built way back in 1894, but it was renovated in 1991 specifically for the filming of the movie. Today, it is home to the Collegiate Summer League DuBois County Bombers, which coincidentally, one of my son Casey's travel ball teammates played a summer of Collegiate Summer League ball for the Bombers at that stadium, which I've not been to. I need to get there. So I mentioned for A League of Their Own, it was filmed at 2 stadiums. The championship game in the League of Their Own movie was shot in Don Mattingly's hometown of Evansville, Indiana, at Bosse Field, which was built in 1915 and is still in use as the home of the Independent Frontier League's Evansville Otters. Perhaps someday will be featured on the Baseball by Design podcast.
I would like to feature them.
Okay, which makes Bosse Field the 3rd oldest ballpark still in regular use, behind only what 2 ballparks is Bosse Field not older than that's still in regular use in professional baseball?
Wrigley?
If correct.
Fenway?
There you go. So you just got part 2 of today's double stumper. So even though you missed the first part, you're back immediately off the schneid. One last thing about War Memorial Stadium. It had the reputation of being so poorly maintained that it earned the nickname the Rock Pile.
Oh, no.
which led Brock Yates, a Sports Illustrated writer, to jokingly write that, quote unquote, it looks as if whatever war it was a memorial to had been fought within its confines. So there you go, War Memorial Stadium, the former home of the Buffalo Bisons, pronounced with a Z as opposed to Owls with a Z.
Oh, very good. Nice connection there. Dan Simon, thank you as always. It's always so much fun to have you on and to learn so much, so much information there to take in this time. So appreciate you coming by, and we'll, as always, go follow Dan on Instagram at @studio_Simon. We should do that every single time. We don't do it every single time.
It's okay. I do not get to post as often as I would like, because so much of my stuff is done now and cannot be shown until much later. But this coming off season, there's at least a couple things that are, I've alluded to this earlier on a previous podcast. There's good stuff coming up. So
good stuff coming up.
Yep.
Dan, we'll see you next week.
Looking forward to it. Bye, Paul.